Thank you so much, and apologies for the delay at the start. Had some issues with the time zone and the technology. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, definitely, very clear.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Can you see the slides?
Not yet, but now yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you again for the opportunity to present this exciting data from the EMPIRE-1 study. It's actually great that we've just seen a case using the PermaFlow delivery system, which was done very beautifully. And in the valve and valve setting, that delivery system works extremely well. Just before I go on to point out that I was the Chief Medical Officer for Biosensors for 4 years, but I'm back in clinical practice now. So you know the Allegra valve, it's the shortest frame height of the self-expanding valves, nitinol frame, of course, bovine pericardium. It has this barrel-shaped stent frame, very, very good hemodynamics, as was demonstrated in the previous case. And as I'll show you, a very low incidence of prosthesis-patient mismatch. And a couple of features of the design are that it's very good for coronary access, and the overall package is very durable. Now, the delivery system that you saw in the previous case is the one that's on the screen now. This has the big advantage of allowing the valve to be implanted with no hemodynamic disturbance. There is no occlusive phase. But it has the major disadvantage that you cannot reposition the valve in situ. So if the valve is too deep or too high, you have to recapture the valve, take it out, and reload and start again. So to address this issue, a new delivery system was designed. This is it, the Imperia delivery system. It's resheathable, repositionable, and allows the valve to be fully retrievable in situ. It is used with the existing Allegra valve, and it will be compatible with the next generation valve also. And the CE mark has just been awarded literally in the last day or so. And you're probably one of the first audiences to hear this news. So the implantation technique is different from the technique you've just seen. It's more akin to the technique you would use with an evolute. We still have the gold markers on the valve. We position in the non-coronary cusp. Generally speaking, we're using cusp overlap. We, as you can see here, we open the inflow up to the gold markers, optimize the height, and then if we're happy, we pace, and we can open quite rapidly from this point on to a hard safety lock. So the delivery system has a safety mechanism that will prevent accidental release of the valve at 80% opening. The hemodynamics are usually very stable at this point. We can adjust the parallax using the gold markers to check for implant height, both on the non-coronary and the left coronary side. When we're happy, we unlock the safety lock and then slowly wind to release the T-bars. And then we have full detachment, as you can see on the far right-hand panel. If you need to resheath, you basically reverse the winding mechanism, and you can resheath from 80% to full closure, and then start again if you're not happy with the original position. So that's the device that was used in the EMPIRE-1 study. It's still 18 French compatible. We still have the same 3 sizes of the valve. It's the same valve. So in the study, we did 121 patients with severe native aortic stenosis and a small subgroup of 16 patients for valve and valve, 11 sites in Spain, Germany, and the Netherlands. And everybody got an Allegra valve implanted using the new Imperia delivery system. So this was the first in man experience for every center who took part in the study. And in fact, some of these centers had no prior experience with the Allegra valve at all. So it was a prospective non-inferiority single-arm multi-center study. The primary endpoint was derived from the almost identical study that Medtronic had to do for the CE mark for the original Evolute valve. So it was VARC2 device success at 7 days, which was the same primary endpoint as that study. And we derived a performance goal from the performance of the Evolute. So that's where we get our target device success rate. And of course, it's an independent echo core lab clinical events committee. The trial was run by cardiologists from the Netherlands. You can see the breakdown of the trial flow here. We actually only screened 176 patients to end up with 137 in the study, so we did not exclude a lot of patients. Each of the centres had to do 3 roll-in cases before they recruited into the intention to treat population, so we ended up with 30 roll-in patients, 91 patients in the intention to treat arm with native aortic stenosis, and the 16 valve cases. Here's a list of the investigators. Antonia Bath was the chief investigator from Vigo. Just a couple of highlights from the baseline characteristics. So the SDS score in the native patients was 4.1, so it's an intermediate risk population. But the valves were quite heavily calcified with a mean calcification burden of over 800 cubic millimeters. This is the very first case that was done in Vigo by Dr. Bath. Pre-dilatation as before. Pacing on the wire, as we just saw with a case from Athens. It's still a very flexible delivery system, just like the PermaFlow. So it goes around difficult arch anatomy without any difficulty. We're in a cusp overlap view here, and you have to bear in mind this is the first time that anybody had ever used this delivery system to implant Allegra in a human patient. So he's going quite slowly and quite carefully. We came to learn that you can go a little bit quicker than this. So slowly unsheathing the valve and checking the position up to the gold markers. And we're aiming for 2 or 3 millimeters in the below the base of the non-coronary cusp. So you can still see the gold markers separating, which does help you with commissural alignment. And that's a technique that obviously we can describe later. So when everybody's happy, we start rapid pacing, and then he opens up to the safety lock position. He actually goes fairly slowly here, but we discovered that you could go quicker as the trial went on. You can see it's very, very stable as it opens. There's no diving in. Implant depth in this case turned out to be excellent. Maybe 1 or 2 millimeters below the non-coronary cusp, so no need to reposition in this first in-human case. And so the valve was detached. Again, quite slowly, just to allow the valve to orientate itself. But we don't really see any tilting as we detach the Allegra with the Imperia delivery system. The inflow stays very stable. Sometimes a little bit of self-centering, but again, you can go a little bit faster than you see in this video, but this was the first ever experience, so the operators were being very, very careful. It's actually easier to get the T-bars off this delivery system than it is off the PermaFlow because this is a titanium loading anchor rather than a plastic loading anchor, and the tolerances in the titanium are a little bit neater. So you can see the last T-bar is just about to come off now. There it goes, and that valve is now fully released, as you can see. And we have this very nice compression of the inflow with the outflow opening to increase the effective orifice area. So just a few comments on the valve itself. So in the native population, half the patients got a 27 valve, and the valve and valve, of course, more than 80% had a 23. Pre-dilatation was mandatory in the native arm, so that was 100%, and just over half the patients got post-dilatation. I mean, this has been commented on, but you'll know from the sad demise of the accurate neovalve how critical it is to do post-dilatation in self-expanding valves if you feel that the valve is underexpanded. Implantation was successful in every case except one patient who converted to a sapien, but that was without any valve embolization. So valve embolization was 0. We had one case where we had great difficulty getting a good stable position in Allegra, so after 3 or 4 attempts, we switched to a balloon expandable. A resheathing was attempted in about half the patients, so we know the resheathing it works and it's safe. Coronary occlusion was 0, need for a second valve was 0. And of course, the data for the 16 valve and valves you can see there. There was actually more resheathing and repositioning with the valve and valve cases, but again, it was very safe. So did we reach our primary endpoint? So we had VARC2 device success. The performance goal was 78%. So think of that as an allowable failure rate of 22%. Non-inferiority margin or relative margin was 1.5. That gives you 11. So 78 minus 11 is 67. We actually got 91.6% with a lower confidence interval at 83. So 83 is, of course, well above this 67 mark. So we were able to declare non-inferiority with a very strong p-value of less than 0.001. The components of device success, so overall in the 121 native, so this is the 91 intention to treat and the 30 roll-in cases, the overall VARC2 device success was 93%, 87.5 for the valve and valve. There were 2 procedural mortalities, but neither of them was adjudicated to be device-related by the Clinical Events Committee. So absence of procedural mortality, 98.3% and 100% for valve and valve. Correct positioning of a single valve, 100%. And this is the really startling result. So that in terms of intended performance of the valve, 0 ppm in the native patients. So 121 native aortic stenosis patients, 0 ppm. And in fact, only 2 moderate ppms out of 16 in the valve and valve. Nobody with a mean gradient above 20, nobody with a peak velocity above 3. And in terms of moderate and severe PVL, we had 5.1% moderate or severe PVL in the natives, but they were all moderate. There were no severes. And of course, no PVL in the valve and valve. But this has been published in Structural Heart. And as I say, I'm pleased to say that we've now just got the CE mark for this device. We have just reported the 1-year results at EuroPCR, again by Dr. Bath. I'll just briefly mention these. So this time we reported VARC3 device success at 30 days to bring it into line with the more contemporary VARC3 definitions. So VARC3 device success in the natives was 87.3, 100% in the valve and valves. Big improvements at 30 days maintained out to 1 year and pretty well in keeping with the data from the SMART trial. And MYHA also dramatic improvements, even further improvements from 30 days to 1 year. Now, I just want to show you this slide, which is a comparison, a cross-study comparison of the Allegra data from EMPERE-1 for patients with an annulus area less than 430 and the Evolute and the Sapien arms from the SMART trial. So you know the cutoff in SMART was annulus area less than 430. So we've taken the patients in the EMPERE-1 trial with an annulus area less than 430, approximately half the patients, and compared the data. And you can see these annulus areas are very comparable, 376, 381, and 383. The VARC3 device success rates in this cohort, 90.7 for EMPERE-1 with Allegra, 94.5 with Evolute, 86.6 with Sapien. Moderate severe PPM, this is when the differences start to emerge, 0 for Allegra, 11.2 for Evolute, and 35.3 with Sapien. Hemodynamic structural valve dysfunction, I've shown you that already, 0 for Allegra, 3.5 with Evolute, and 32.8 with Sapien, driven by the higher gradients and the PPM. And overall bioprosthetic valve dysfunction, 3.6% in this cohort, so less than the 5.9 in the overall cohort, only 2 patients, 1 with a moderate PVR, 1 valve thrombosis, and then against 9.4 and 41.6 for Evolute and Sapien. Now, I appreciate these are cross-study comparisons, and this is not a randomized comparison, but it gives us confidence that Allegra does offer something in addition to what you already get with the Evolute in the self-expanding space. So final slide, the one-year results of EMPERE-1 confirm the safety and efficacy of the new Imperia delivery system when used to implant the Allegra valve. The excellent hemodynamic performance at 30 days was maintained at 1 year. We still have no native patients with moderate to severe PPM and no patients with bioprosthetic valve failure in 1 year. So thank you very much for your time, and congratulations on a fantastic meeting.
So thank you, Professor Oldroyd, for this excellent presentation. You presented, new data. It's a new, actually it's the same device, but implanted in maybe a different way, right? So it's, do you know, can you elaborate a little bit on the logic of why do they have to make this change, to get rid of the permafrost, which was supposedly one of the main advantages of the Allegra system, and have the new iteration of the device to make it more friendly to self-expanding users, or?
Yes, I mean, basically the feedback on Allegra since it was launched in 2017 is great valve, but we would prefer a delivery system that allowed the valve to be repositioned in situ. So I think MVT and biosensors made a very difficult decision in 2020 to redesign the delivery system, because as you say, there are some advantages to the permaflow system. But we think we've retained, obviously, the excellent hemodynamic performance of the valve and given operators the opportunity, if they need it, to reposition the valve. And in fact, what we saw in the study, and all of the cases were proctored by either myself or Anders Johnson, who took over from me as a chief medical officer. What we found is very, very little hemodynamic derangement during deployment. So we've almost retained that feature, but given the operators the safety margin of being able to reposition the valve if it's too deep or too high.
Good. And of course, it's the same valve, the same hemodynamic characteristics, as you said. So, for people who are not knowledgeable on this device, which are the main future characteristics that that they are that they constitute the advantage, the main advantage of this device as opposed to the other platforms? It's the pole movement. Maybe we don't know acutely. Maybe there's no big significance, but maybe on the long run or some other futures.
Sure, no, that's absolutely right. So the mechanical performance or the design of the frame is such that, as you know, there's very, very low leaflet stress. So we have high radial force in the inflow, but low radial force in the outflow. That allows the frame to move during each cardiac cycle and dissipate leaflet stress. And that should confer durability. Now we need much longer follow-up to prove this. But of course, excellent hemodynamics also confer durability. So the whole hypothesis, for instance, of patient prosthesis mismatch is that it will eventually lead to early structural valve deterioration. And this is the argument that's been laid out for clinicians by investigators in the SMART trial. The high PPM rate with the SAPIEN will feed into structural valve deterioration. Now, we haven't seen that so far at 2 years in the SMART trial data presented in March, but let's wait and see how it goes at 3 or 4 or 5 years. But what we know now from EMPERE-1, core lab adjudicated data, which confirms we knew before, the PPM rate with Allegra is even lower than Evolute. And so, it's theoretically possible that Allegra will have even greater durability down the line. Not to mention, of course, improved symptom relief, faster regression of LVH, and so on.
So is there a direct comparison between Evolute and Allegra? Like in
No. So that is in the planning stages at the moment, a randomized controlled trial between Allegra and Evolute.
Yeah, and in the morning we had an excellent presentation by Roxana Meran, the president-elect of the American College of Cardiology, which presented the follow-up data of the SMART trial. You think this data can be, let's say, transmittable to, do they hold true for Allegra as well, because it's a self-expanding platform, a supraannular self-expanding platform?
Well, you know, I mean, I issue a health warning about cross-study comparisons. I mean, I showed you that slide. Looking at the patients in Empire 1 that would have met the entry criteria for the SMART trial, and you can see that there's an incremental benefit for Allegra even over Evolute. But I mean, of course, it's open to debate whether or not this will eventually lead to earlier bioprosthetic valve failure. We just don't know at the moment.
So yes, we will be open, of course, to the upcoming studies for that. So any comments from the audience? Greg, do you have experience with Allegra? But you have, so we have together with us Dr. Pavlidis. He's under his guidance, the first THV was implanted in December 2007, right? So what's your take on the device? You don't use, but you use the other self-expanding valves, right?
The data look good. Actually, I have no experience with the Allegra. It's not approved in the US, so I haven't used it. But the hemodynamics seems to be, you know, excellent, and the low ppm rate is also of interest. So it's other than, you know, waiting to use it, perhaps I cannot really make any other comment.
Good. So, and of course, we have another session. We had another session today on coronary artery disease and aortic stenosis. So, how easy is to cannulate the Allegra, the coronaries through the Allegra cells, Professor Oldroyd? You think it's how meticulous should we be in aligning the valve?
So, well, the gold markers can be used to assess implant depth because they mark the new valve plane. So you can tell whether you're above or below the coronary ostia using those gold markers. They can also be used to do commissural alignment, which of course is a critical factor for maintaining coronary access post-TAVI, and also for optimizing hemodynamics and reducing leaflet thrombosis and so on. In the with a new delivery system, we have added, and I haven't shown you this, but we have added a marker on the loading anchor, a bit like the HAT marker on the Evolute, which will allow operators to do commissural alignment with the Imperia delivery system and the Allegra valve. So we are still very, very confident that coronary access will be very easy after implantation of the Allegra with the Imperia delivery system.
So this is a good point and very, very important, you know, as times go by and, you know, we try to treat younger patients. If there are no other comments, do you have a final say, Professor Oldroyd, before we wrap up this satellite symposium?
Yeah, well, just to reiterate the fact that we will be able to start doing cases with the Imperia delivery system soon. And the next development that will come along to address the residual 5% moderate PVL rate with the existing valve is a second generation valve with a unique anti-PVL mechanism. And we hope to be able to start testing that later this year.
So there are some surprises as well. So I don't know that. So you have. So I suppose that there is an enhanced skirt, right? So
it's not a fully circumferential skirt. It's what's called a V skirt or a labyrinth seal. So we already have preliminary data on the first 60 patients that have been treated with this device, and it looks like it works extremely well.
Good. So hopefully we will see this device maybe in a protocol or in a study.
Yes,
you know, in
I hope
Greece
so.
as well. Yes, and hopefully we'll see you here. So thank
Yeah,
you for
look forward to
taking
it.
the time to talk to us about the new iteration of the Allegra system. So thank you.
It's a pleasure.